Are you making enough at work? Find out what the church has to say about that in this episode of the Catholic Money Show.
Welcome back to this series in our Rerum Novarum podcast series here on the Catholic Money Show. This is episode 4.
4. I'm raring to go on this Novarum.
We are excited to dive back into this. You're right. I think it is episode 4 of the series. And it's been a bombshell so far, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback.
It's really bombed. Is not what you meant to say? No.
A lot of really good conversations over on social media. So if you're following us on Instagram, we are at WalletWin. I have enjoyed talking back and forth with several people who've enjoyed this series. Jonathan's not really on Instagram. That's okay. You're just chatting me. That's okay. And
sounds fun.
Yeah, it is. We have a lot of fun over there.
Huh.
It's mostly us gals chit-chatting. Occasionally some gentlemen as well. Anyway, we are diving back into the Rerum Novarum series. And why don't you just do a quick recap, John, of where we've been up to this point, and then what are we turning to today?
Yes, we are talking about Pope Leo XIII's encyclical Rerum Novarum, where he talks about labor and capital, about the working class and the owning, perhaps ruling class, the conflicts that have come up as people have been living through the Industrial Revolution. And we are covering this now. One, it's an incredible document, treasure of the church, but it is getting a particular attention now because our current and I guess new Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, picked that name kind of as a callback to Leo XIII, and in particular, this encyclical, because it forms the basis. It is like the root, it is the bottom level of modern Catholic social teaching.
Yep.
This is when the church really started to talk about this and teach about this. And so let's go back to the root and see what it says. This is available. I took a big
one and I got a little one.
I printed out a little one. I think I printed out 2 little ones like this.
You tested my eyesight.
Little. So that I reprinted it.
You stuck me with this one that's going to age my eyes.
So yeah, but you can, you can find this, you can buy a book of it or whatever, but you can just print it out yourself. Just search Rerum Novarum. You'll find the Vatican website, maybe a couple other places. You can print it out yourself. You can read it on the thing, whatever you like. But to go through this, he talks about the shortcomings. He gets into this a bit of saying, things are kind of rough out there. As we're getting into this new age, things are getting a little out of whack. And then he moves on, one of the kind of responses to that a lot of people have been talking about is this socialism stuff. And that's no good because of this, and that reason. And he goes into all that. We've discussed that in previous episodes. Mm-hmm. And then he talks about kind of the responsibilities, the rights, the duties of employer and employee. He talks about the right use of money, the dignity of work and labor, how the church has put this into practice, the role of the state in
that last week?
Regulating and kind of protecting natural rights, but only so far as is needed. Mm-hmm. And now we're going into, we are starting to now pivot into, right, we looked at the state level, now we're going to go down a level and talk about the worker and the employer. And what are their responsibilities? What are their rights? Mm-hmm. What can a worker do to make sure that those rights aren't being taken away from them?
Mm-hmm. Bada bing, bada boom.
I think that's what we're popping into. So if you're reading along at home,
yes, where are we?
We're going to pick up at paragraph, even though sometimes they're longer than a paragraph, but paragraph 42, and we're going to go about 19 or so in.
Where are we going to?
Right up next to the conclusion.
Oh,
Because in next episode, we're going to talk about the conclusion, kind of an overview of the ideas, and a look at some of the other teachings of the church and other encyclicals from other popes that have come since this, in the last 100 whatever years. Okay. So we're going to do a lot of what this is saying, and then next week, the cherry on top, and then a little hot fudge from JP2 and such as that.
Okay.
All right, so let's go to 42. This is
Kick us off.
And then this is in a section in a different translation. I think it was maybe one that came out initially. Not exactly sure, but anyway, one I found online. They inserted some little headings that help you see an this too. So this is where they're starting to talk about the hours of labor. So this is some of the rights and of the worker and things that an employer needs to keep in mind. And this is a good just overview of the whole rest of this episode here. The beginning of 42 says, if we turn now to things external and material, the first thing of all to secure is to save unfortunate working people from the cruelty of men of greed who use human beings as mere instruments for money-making. It is neither just nor human to so grind men down with excessive labor as to stupefy their minds and wear out their bodies.
This was written in 1891? Huh.
Yep. Sure have learned our lesson, haven't we? But so we have to, it's just an exhortation to remember we are dealing with people. And especially as company is getting larger and larger and employing hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people. It's people.
Yeah.
Not just faithless workers, not just laborers, not just a certain number of hours. They're people. And we need to keep that in mind. It goes on later to say, daily labor, therefore, should be so regulated as not to be protracted over longer hours than strength admits. The rest of this paragraph goes on essentially saying you can't overwork people. And in order to figure out, well, what is overwork, you need to take into account the work you're asking them to do. He's saying, coal miner,
shoveling
that's
stuff.
a whole lot harder than, I don't know.
Somebody typing something.
Driving the Zamboni. Probably, yeah, you could drive that Zamboni all day and maybe, have a little bit of a sore butt. But digging out coal all day, that's totally different. So you got to think about the work that's being asked to do, the conditions under which that work is being done.
Is it 110 degrees out?
Yes.
Versus, are we in an air-conditioned environment?
Exactly. So the work being done, the conditions it's being done in, and then who's doing the work, right? You've got the huge, big, brawny, strong guy. Well, if it requires a lot of physical labor, he's going to be able to do a whole lot more than I can, let alone
me,
Amanda, or a kid. And then this is where we see child labor being addressed. You can't have these kids doing this crazy, dangerous stuff. It's great the way he talks about it. He says, and in regard to children, great care should be taken not to place them in workshops and factories until their bodies and minds are sufficiently developed. For just as very rough weather destroys the buds of spring, so does too early inexperience of life's hard toil blight the young promise of a child's faculties and render any true education impossible. Whew, there we go.
Right. Too much responsibility on a child is going to stunt them and can harm them for life.
Yes. And then at the end just kind of brings it on back that it should be a principle that a workman ought to have leisure and rest proportionate to the wear and tear of his strength, for waste of strength must be repaired by cessation from hard work. You work hard, you got to rest.
Yeah, you can't just...
You need a break.
Shovel coal 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's an element of the bodily strength, but there's also inside this encyclical the acknowledgement that we as persons aren't just siloed into our body, but also our family life, our intellectual life, our spiritual life. All these things matter, and we need time for those things too. So it's not like we would only take a break just to get a little more of a return out of our mega bones. That time away, the cessation from work, is also so that we can strengthen spend ourselves investing in those other relationships as well.
Yes. And then, so then we go into 43, and we're talking about wages. Now we're going to talk about wages. And I'm going to read almost all 43 because the first line of 44 references, it says, and this, or it is, and we need to know what the it is. So this is the it. It says, wages, we're told, are regulated by free consent, and therefore the employer, when he pays what was agreed upon, has done his part, and is seemingly not called upon to do anything beyond. The only way, it is said, in which injustice might occur would be if the master refused to pay the whole of the wages, or if the workman should not complete the work undertaken. In such cases, the public authority should intervene to see that each obtains his due, but not under any other circumstances. So that's this idea here. And then 44 goes in to say, to this kind of argument, a fair-minded man will not easily or entirely assent. So if you have half a brain, you're not going to, yup, to what I just said. He says, it is not complete, for there are important considerations which it leaves out of account altogether. And then in these last few paragraphs that we'll go through today, he kind of starts talking about what these associations, these unions can be, or how they could be.
Yeah, and about the fruit that could come forth from them.
Yes.
Because this is the pressing issue of the times. So in 55, he gets into, and they are not wanting, this part I liked. It's, again, champions of these Christian-based organizations that are aligned with morality and justice and good. There are not wanting Catholics blessed with affluence who have, as it were, cast in their lot with the wage earners and have spent large sums in founding and widely spreading benefit and insurance societies, unions, by means of which the working man may without difficulty acquire through his labor not only the present advantages, but also certain honorable support in the days to come. So he's kind of singling out and praising, there's actually the wealthy of society casting their lot in with the working man, seeing themselves right there amongst them, putting their wealth to work to make sure these protections, these societies come forth, protecting the working man. It made me think of St. Catherine Drexel, because that she was kind of a modern day version of this after this was written. But I wonder if she read this and if it had any influence. I wouldn't be shocked if it hadn't had a pretty big impact. Yeah. But he continues to go on. I don't want to stomp over all of your notes.
That's fine.
But essentially just that faith needs to be the foundation of these things. Faith has to be protected in these societies, in these organizations, or else it's nothing. Or else it's just not going to leave a lasting impact.
Yes. So it says, what advantage can it be to a working man to obtain by means of a society material well-being if he endangers his soul for lack of spiritual food? And I think what we hear, and then he quotes, of course, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and suffer the loss of his soul? Yeah. I think we hear that a lot of kind of making a deal with the devil, right? Like, oh, well, yeah, I'll go along with this bad in order to get some of this worldly good. But he's saying you could do this by getting worldly good and just neglecting the spiritual side of things. He says that, these organizations should help each individual member to better his condition to the utmost in body, soul, and property. Right. That it's the whole person here. It says, let the working man be urged and led to the worship of God, to the earnest practice of religion, and among other things, to keeping holy of Sundays and holy days. Let them love the church, all this stuff. And that the rights and duties of the employers, as compared with the rights and duties of the employed, ought to be the subject of careful consideration. Should it happen that either a master or a workman believes himself injured, nothing could be more desirable than a committee appointed, composed of reliable and capable members of the association to figure this out. Like, there's some real things that, yes, it shouldn't just be some Bible study or whatever, but that should be the foundation of it, that by being a member in this association, in this union, you become a better person. As well as, look out for some of the material things. And it says, these rules and regulations, if willingly obeyed by all, will sufficiently ensure the well-being of the less to do. Yeah. that we should be taking care of each other.
Yep. And that if they do what they promise, and this brings us kind of to the end in paragraph 61, a further advantage is that there's going to exist so much ground for hope and likelihood even of recalling a sense of duty those working men have who have either given up faith altogether or whose lives at variance with its precepts. Such men feel in most cases they've been fooled by empty promises, deceived by false pretexts. They cannot but perceive that their grasping employers too often treat them with great inhumanity and hardly care for them outside of their profit and labor brings. And if they belong to any union, it's probably one in which there exists, instead of charity and love, that intestine strife, which ever accompanies poverty when unresigned and unsubstantiated by religion. Broken in spirit and worn down in body, how many of them would gladly free themselves from such galling bondage? But human respect or the dread of starvation makes them tremble to take the step. To such as these, Catholic associations are of an incalculable service by helping them out of their difficulty, inviting them to companionship, and receiving and returning wanderers to a haven where they may securely find repose. So the answer here is that the state has duties. These unions have duties. The workers have duties. The employers have duties. But you can never erase God and the church and the spiritual foundation of all mankind in the conversation here. If that gets erased, we're never going to find a lasting solution.
Yes, all of this is a response to the safeguarding of the inherent human dignity of every single person, no matter what role they play in society. We need to be taking care of people. That is the foundation of Catholic social teaching. That's what's being put forth in this encyclical. And in our next episode, we will be looking at how that has gone from this encyclical over 100 years ago and has bloomed and blossomed and grown through the ages, through other papacies, through other teaching of the church to what we have today.
And we'll be looking about how it's not just written for the Industrial Revolution, but even for modern times in the AI revolution we find upon us. All that and more in the next episode of the Catholic Money Show. Until then, bye for now.